The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone. This is Ashley with Quartix. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited about this. It's going to be our first webinar of the year, and this is just for customers. So this is really going to be something that we want to help you guys make sure that you know how to use the system confidently. We're going to go into some examples of how existing customers use these timesheet features, and then we'll get really into detail on the daily vehicle log, the daily and weekly emails. We'll look at the trip reporter and our time on site report. And then we're going to finish up with a question and answer session that's going to be hosted by my colleague and our office coordinator, Lindsay Miller. So we really want this webinar, again, to be for you. We want it to be real life application, not just zooming through things really quick. So any questions, anything that is going to help you and run your business with our system, we want to help. So if you have the webinar, gosh, what do you call that? Little box thing, controller there, you're going to see that there's a section near the bottom that says questions. So if you have any questions, I encourage you to type them in as we go through so that you don't forget about them and we can answer it at the end. And once you've typed it in, you're going to hit send questions to staff. So that's a little bit of just sort of getting started here. And now we're just going to launch in with a quote from a really great customer of mine. Tina Kaiser is an office manager for a New Jersey landscape company called Meadow Services. And she actually helped beta test some of the features we'll look at here today. And she shared with us that at the end of the week, I can compile a spreadsheet to compare the actual time that the job took with what our crews say the hours were to complete the job. Because our crews know they're being monitored, production's getting done faster, on time, and within budget. So that's really our goal for you guys here today. And what we're going to do is start with our daily vehicle log. This is one of our most popular features. You're going to see how you can get details on your driver's daily activities. We're going to see how you can go through one trip at a time. And we'll also take a little side trip to show you how you can customize locations just to make the report even faster and easier to use. So we're going to jump over to our website here, and I have us hopefully all logged in. Hopefully it didn't time me out. Okay, there we go. So this will look familiar to you. This is where you normally sign in. And we're going to go to the second one down, so the daily vehicle log. Now, when you do the daily vehicle log, there's a few options here. So the first is going to be group. So with the group, if you have those set up, you could select, for example, to see just your vehicles that are in one location but not the other, or just for one department, like using the example of landscaping, maybe irrigation versus hardscape. We, however, are just going to do it for all, and we're going to select a vehicle down here. We're going to go with this Kenworth. And for the date, you can always click this little calendar icon to choose the date you want. We're just going to keep it nice and easy and click yesterday. And then I always recommend that people check this box right here to show the time on site. We're going to get into why as we go through to the report, but I think it's incredibly helpful to give you a picture of how the vehicle's day is going. So we're going to click OK and go on through to the report. And what we'll do here is we're just going to start with sort of defining some of the terms and going through how you read it. So the first column we have here is going to be the trip. Now, I always like to define what this is in our system. Is a trip starts when they turn the ignition on. So for this trip, it was at, wow, 3:07 a.m. They've got a nice early day there. And then it ends, and for this one, actually, they have quite a long first trip of the day. So we're going to scroll down a little bit here. So it ends when they turn the ignition off. And it shows you automatically the address where they're starting and stopping. Now, I'm sure you can see that there's a whole lot of different starts and stops within that trip. So what we do is if the vehicle is idling for 2 minutes or longer, we create sub-trips. So that's what each of these rows are right here. So that way you can see where they're stopping when they're idling. And now we're just going to go through how you read this report. So the departure, it gives you the time, and the default is it's going to show you the full address here, shows you when they arrive, and if they're idling, it'll say stopped with ignition on. The next column over is going to show you the travel time, and that's broken into sub-trip if there are any. So that is going to be the time from point A to point B. Now the idling time, the next one over, you'll notice it's not broken into sub-trip. And the reason is the idling time is between those sub-trips. So right between here and here and here. So what we do is we add all of those different idling moments within the trip to one, and wow, okay, 2 hours and 16 minutes. That's a heck of a lot of idling time. Now, with idling, obviously, for some companies, they may be doing work with the vehicle idling. But for most of them, you really want to cut down on that in order to save on fuel costs. And just some other things you'll see here. And we've got the distance traveled, the average speed per trip. And then the last one, this is that one that I love, the time on site. This is going to be awesome, especially for you guys out there with companies where you're doing a service. So the time that they spend at a location is where they do their job versus the time in transport. So with this, it makes it incredibly easy to see at each of their stops throughout the day how much time they spent there. So for example, if you have a customer that's located at 90480 66 Ave, 66, excuse me, in Mecca, California, and they call you and say, hey, I was away from the office, but I wanted to check how long they spent working at the job site. All you have to do is just look at here, and just at a glance, you'll see, okay, they got there at 11:01 a.m., and they spent 28 minutes there. So it's very simple and easy to do as the day goes on. Something that can also be incredibly helpful here, so this is kind of a little side trip for us, is customizing locations. So the default you'll see here is that shows you the full address of where the vehicle starts and stops. But if you go to the same places frequently, it can be incredibly helpful to have either the client name, the job site number, something that's going to be a shorthand for you so that you can quickly and easily get the info. So there's two different ways you can do that, and I'm just going to show you the way you can do it right from this report. So you'll click on the address that you want, and it's going to bring you to the location map, and you'll see this little red donut shape here on the map. We're going to click on that, and it brings up an info box to add a custom location. So then you could enter in, you know, job site number 1 or whatever you desire. It automatically gives it a maximum radius of 100 yards. You can adjust that if you want. Most people end up going with a default, and then you would save it. And with this, it's going to now, when you go to that location the next time, you'll see the name that you chose instead of the address. And just something to keep in mind, it isn't retroactive. It's from the point you do it forward. So that way you'll be able to read the reports very quickly and easily. Now, I'm going to just jump back, and I want to show you just another little extra thing here, because a lot of the times when people are looking at this report, it can be helpful to see a visual. So if you are looking through the daily vehicle log, you've got all this great info, but you may need a little bit more context. You can always click on the magnifying glass icon that's under the trip number you're interested in. So here we've got under trip number 1, we've got our little magnifying glass icon there. So we're just going to click on that. And this is going to bring us to the route map feature. So now you're able to see, wow, this really was a long trip. This poor driver, they must be tired. You've got a very long trip here. It shows you all the ins and outs. If you zoom in, you're going to see a little bit more detail here. Each of these is a little circle. If you hold your mouse over, it's going to give you the exact time they were there, direction of travel, and their speed. Great. So from here, we're going to jump back here and look at some more timesheet features. But again, if you have any questions about how to use the things we've looked at so far, feel free to type them into that question bar. And then what we'll do is get back to those at the end during our Q&A. So the next thing I want to show you is that when you have the daily vehicle log, you can look at that info on the website, but also automatically we're going to send you this really great daily vehicle log. So it gives you the info that you see in the one on the website, but also it's just really formatted nicely so that in addition to seeing the trip breakdown like you do on the website, it separates out time on site. So that's another great one. At the end of the day, want to see how long they spend at each job. At the top, it gives you a summary, so you can look at number of trips, total distance, average speed, all of those really helpful things, in addition to shift time. So with features like this, you can either double check, or you could ostensibly replace having your drivers tell you when they started and ended the workday. Instead, you're going to be able to see, okay, they started at 8:45 and they ended at 3:40, and then that was their total shift duration. Oh, and just one thing I want to point out here. So this is in 24-hour time or military time. You can adjust that to have it in 12-hour time as well. Now there's another feature that you're also going to see. Oh, one moment. I think my screen is being a little wacky here. Bear with me if you don't mind. Let's see. Come on, computer, you can do it. All right. So we've got one image. Let me pull up the right one. Never a dull moment here. Okay. Come on, webinar. I think this is going to be it. Okay, there we are. Thanks for bearing with me, guys. What you also get for an automatic email is going to be a weekly summary also. So automatically at the end of the week, it's usually set up to go out on Sundays, but you can adjust that in your settings. You will get a report that's going to show you a really great summary here. Oh, wouldn't you know it? One moment. There we go. I think this webinar has it out for me here. Okay, there we are. So with the weekly spreadsheet, it's another really great way, and this is the one that I believe Tina was referring to in that quote for my customer earlier. It's a really easy way at the end of the week to look and see number of trips, travel time, distance, and then of course down here at the bottom, really key to helping you streamline, payroll, making sure your drivers are being honest about their hours, start of first trip, and then end of last trip, total duration. So you can see all of that right here. So thanks for bearing with me on that. We're going to take a look now at the next feature here. So something I also wanted to point out, some of you may have our Info Point plan, and some of you may have Info Plus. If you have Info Point, the last features we looked at are included. If you have Info Plus, these next ones are going to be a part of your system. So the next one's going to be our Trip Reporter, which is another way to get your driver shift times, review mileage and location. Another benefit is it's very easy to export to Excel. So we're going to jump back over here to the website, and we're going to, actually, let me jump to a different screen here. All right, there we go. So we're going to go back to the main menu, and I want to show you where you can get each of these. So it's going to be under Trip Reporting. So that'll be the fifth option down. You'll click Trip Reporting, then Trip Reporter. You can do this by individual vehicle. We're going to do it by all, just so you have a little more info to look at here. You can do by group, vehicle, start and end date. We're just going to do for the month. Under group by, you always want to check the box for vehicle, and then we'll click OK. Now, while this is pulling up, I just wanted to go over one small thing in the settings you may have just noticed. There's a little box at the bottom in the settings about privacy. So that is something, it's actually, I don't think our US customers use it as often, but if you have an employee that you want to reward by letting them use the vehicle during off hours, then what you can do is set up times when it's going to track the vehicle's mileage, but it won't track its location. So it's just a nice way of showing that you trust them. But for our purposes here, we're going to skip over sort of how to set that up. If you do have any questions about it, let us know. So with the Trip Reporter, the first thing you get is it brings you to a summary where you're going to see each of the vehicles, their trip travel time, idling time. You see the business distance, privacy distance would be there if there was any separated out, and then the totals. And then you can also get into all the details by clicking on the magnifying glass icon next to any of these vehicles here. And this includes all of the categories that we saw in the daily vehicle log. The benefit of it is that you can aggregate that info for any time period you like. So I have one customer actually in particular, Denise from A Quick Tow. I know that she uses this to, at the end of every 2 weeks or at the end of the month, she'll run this report so that she can see all of their stops and all of their movement throughout that time period. And it's also, if you're using those custom locations, it's going to be very easy to read through, and you can also export it to Excel. So if you want to do that, you'll see in the gray box to the right of the screen, there's a little box for export. So you would click on that, and then you're going to get this window where you can export the summary, the entire trip details, this vehicle only, and then you're able to export it to Excel or to a CSV file very easily. And so from here, we're going to close this out. And the next feature here that I wanted to touch base on is going to be sort of similar to the way you can look at details for over time, but it's going to be for a specific address. So what we're going to do here is I'll just show you a little summary of it first before we go to the feature itself. So with this feature, the time on site, you're able to quickly and easily view total hours spent at a specific address. Especially helpful, again, if a client calls in, hey, how long did you spend at this location? Or if you bill them based on time on site. You can easily compare and view the trip details and export to Excel. So we're going to jump back to our website here. And we're going to go next. I actually just sort of pulled up some info already for this report. But the way it works here is you'll see on the screen when you click on Time on Site Report, it's under Fleet Management. Then it's going to ask you to enter in an address. You can either enter an address, or if you have custom locations set up, you can also select one of those. And then what you're going to do is choose a date range and then a radius around that location. So for our purposes today, I actually picked our address here at our office in Chicago and 5 miles around it. And now I've got this report that's showing me each time these vehicles were within 5 miles of that address. When you run the report, I find people often do it for a smaller radius, for example, 0.5 miles per hour. But you get to see both the details here, so the vehicle, when it arrived, now event, so that's ignition on or off, location, departure time, and total time on site. So you get to see the details for each. If you have several different employees doing the same job at the same location and you want to see what's the average amount of time they spent here, you can look at these totals. And I'm just sort of, going off the hip here, but it looks like a lot of them are spending around 14 to 18 minutes. And then we have some outliers that are going around an hour here at this location. So it gives you a good sense of what amount of time to expect. And then also it's going to give you the all-important total, which you're going to use if you're doing any kind of billing based on hours of service. And so you'll see here also it breaks it up into 2 sections. So you can see here up at the top, it's going to show sort of one round of the info. And usually what it's going to do here is ignition off versus ignition on. And this, again, you can export to Excel right here. Oh, when I clicked it, it didn't show the options. You'll see it just downloaded it very quickly. So any questions about this, again, let us know. You can type it into that box and then we can answer at the end, or I'd be happy to walk you through it afterwards, give you a call, and we could help you with your actual account. So what we've looked at here today are going to be those really key features in what we offer for timesheets. What I'd love to do now is just sort of open it up to you guys. I'd love to hear if you have any questions about what we went through. So we're going to have my colleague Lindsay Miller come on the phone here. And again, if you haven't put in a question yet, if you need a recap, let me know. Any more info. Also, we're going to include here in the webinar a poll for future webinars. So you should see that pop up in the little, oh, I don't know what to call it, the webinar box thing. You'll see that come up and you can vote for what would be helpful in the future. Okay, so Lindsay, welcome to the webinar. How are you today?
Hi, Ashley. I'm good, thanks.
Great.
Just to jump right in, we have a question from David. He was trying to make those special labels for his sites that he goes to often, and he says when he clicks on the donut on the map, instead of allowing the label, the box to pop up to edit, it zooms in. Can you show again how to get to that label mode?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is another one too where I'm going to go through it with you now, but if you have chat in if you have any trouble, doing it after, and I can give you a buzz. So we're going to go back to the website here, and let me just get on to the feature. And actually, Dave, I'm really glad you asked this question because there's actually two different ways that you can add custom locations. So I'm going to show you both ways here. And so the first way that we looked at doing it is from the daily vehicle log. This is the way people tend to add it if it's kind of on the fly. So we're going to look at yesterday. We're going to click OK. And so when you click on an address, so I'm clicking here on 1600 Dayton Road in Rancho Cucamonga. I always say that wrong. Now, when I click on the red circle, then it pulls up the window here, and then you can enter it in. If you're having trouble, I think, Lindsay, did you say it was like zooming in? It was zooming in when he clicked?
Yeah, he said it was zooming into the location instead of pulling up that customization box.
Gotcha. So for that, I'm not 100% sure because there's a couple little variables kind of depending on what kind of computer you're using, things like that. I find that if it's a touch screen that you're using, if you're using like a tablet or something like that, I usually recommend that people zoom in a fair amount first and then click it. And then that way it'll sort of rule out the option of maybe you clicked slightly to one side or the other. So that should help, but type in, let us know if you need further help with that. And while we're in here, I want to show you the second way that you can add custom locations. For this, if we're going to go to Fleet Management and then under Manage Locations, this is a feature that's going to be for InfoPlus people on the call here. So for this one, what you can do is go to the gray box on the right-hand side of the screen, and you're going to see now that there'll be a button for upload. So right here, upload. So what you can do is upload an Excel spreadsheet with just two simple columns. You'd have one column for the location name you wanted. So here's an example of some that we already have added to the demo. And then the second column would be for the full address plus the zip code. So I would say if you have, 5 or more and you have InfoPlus, it can be helpful to just add them all at once using a spreadsheet and then clicking the upload button to add them all at one time. Great. And
Thank you, Ashley.
What other questions? Oh. You're welcome.
I was going to say we actually have another question from also an Ashley. She wanted to know if you can switch the daily logs to a different email. So can she set up a separate account to get those daily logs so they're not filtering all into clogging up one email address?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to go back to the menu here. This is something that's going to be under your configuration settings. And anything with configurations, you know, we go through it usually once, but you'll probably be using it more than one time if you make any tweaks to it. So any questions at all on this, let us know, and your sales reps or our support team, we're always happy to walk you through it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go into edit standard vehicle details. We're going to pick that same one we were looking at before, and we'll click OK. And so under edit standard vehicle details here, you have several different options. What we're going to do is scroll down to the bottom. And what you'll see here is below the little picture of the vehicle, we've got time of day to generate reports, so 2 a.m. So this is for your daily email. It's going to automatically go out to 2 a.m. And we have it set out to go to Ian Pauley here. So if you wanted to change that, you could erase his name, type in the one you want. You also have the option of entering another one, so you can enter a colleague email there. You can also do this for the weekly spreadsheet, and that's the one that we looked at earlier. And you can choose the person you send it to, the day and time, and then also sometimes people choose to have just one or the other. You can always click this box to either enable or unenable these. So that's the way you can do it on your own. And then also, if you need any assistance with that, you can email support@quartix.com, and they can also do this process for you.
Thanks, Ashley. It looks like we have time for one more question, and there's actually been 2 posts about this, so I'm going to do this one. And I don't know if you were going to cover this, but if we don't get to your questions here, I do have all your email addresses for those who did post questions. So we'll reach out to you after the webinar. I just wanted to throw that in before I got to this last question.
Sure.
And it comes from both Sophie and Grant. Sorry, I had to scroll down there. And it is about time zones. One is, where can you see the time zone on the report? And how do you change the time zone if it is set up incorrectly?
Sure. So just one quick thing on time zones. When we get you set up, the automatic way we do it is by using your local time zone. Now, we do have actually quite a few companies, however, that have multiple locations. So just off the top of my head, I know I have one where they have a location in California, Colorado, and then I think it was Ohio. So to do that, what you can do is, first of all, you can email support. I always love, they're great. They can help you with all of this stuff too if you have any questions. Or you can go into, oops, look at that. I've still got those yellow highlights there. Well, let's see. Let me get rid of those. Okay, there we go. I feel better now that those are gone. Okay, so you can go into configuration here, and it would be under, so if you go to edit company details, this is actually, sorry, I sort of took a little side trip here. I wanted to show you the 24 versus 12-hour time. I mentioned that earlier. So you would change that here. And then if you have just one sorry. Oh, I think I need more coffee here. If you have one time zone and you notice that it's off, I would say you can actually just email support. You know what? I would skip the settings for that and just email them to do it for you so that they can go through and double check that it's working for all of the different vehicles. And if you have further questions on this too, I'm going to follow up with all of you guys after we get all the questions, after we get off the webinar. I'm happy to go through it in more detail. Great. So let me see here. So Lindsay, was that our last question or did we have another one?
That was the last question for this webinar. Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, everyone. I've really loved doing this. One of my favorite things is to go through these features with customers. So you sign up and we want to make sure that You have everything you need to succeed. We also learn a whole lot from you guys and what you're looking for. So thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for your questions, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Bye.